By 5 o'clock on Thanksgiving afternoon, I caught myself thinking something dangerous. Nothing has gone wrong yet. If you grew up in chaos, or married into it, or raised it, you already know why that thought made my stomach tighten. In a home that runs on conflict, calm isn't peace. Calm is a fuse, and you never know how much of it is left. At 5 p.m., right on schedule, the day found its explosion. But here's what kept me awake that night. It wasn't the shouting. It wasn't the things that got thrown across my kitchen. It was a question I'd been circling for years and could finally see clearly. What if the explosion wasn't an accident? What if the fight was a door and someone needed a reason to walk through it? This is Entangled in Chaos. Understand the chaos, break the pattern. The day started before I even got out of bed. I reached for my phone and there it was, a text from my partner in all capital letters about money. Again, she'd gone out the night before and never came home. And I want you to notice my honest reaction to that because it matters later. I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel worried. I felt relief. One less variable in the house. That's what 20-some years of this does to you. Absence starts to feel like a gift. I got up and started cleaning the kitchen. It was Thanksgiving. There was cooking to do, and if the kitchen was going to be ready, I knew who was going to make it ready. The same person who always does. That's when my daughter, grown now, an adult, came out of her room, not with good morning, not with happy Thanksgiving. She came out already irritated, already escalating, upset because I was cleaning the kitchen wrong. Think about that for a second. I was alone in a quiet house washing dishes, and somehow that was an attack. Somehow that required a response. I hadn't said a word to anyone yet, and I was already in a conflict I never agreed to attend. I didn't take the bait, I kept scrubbing. She retreated. Round 1, survived. The cooking took most of the day, and I'll be honest about the division of labor because I think a lot of you will recognize it. I made the turkey, I made the ham, I made the mashed potatoes. My partner, who reappeared during the day, did help with one dish in the morning, and my daughter made one dish of her own. Everything else was mine. It always is. And while I cooked, my partner did what she does. The couch, the complaints. I'm too tired. I don't feel good. I can't. The specific words rotate, but the message never changes. The work of this family is not my job. 2 decades of that message, delivered daily, and you stop arguing with it. You just pick up the pan. But here's the strange part. The afternoon was fine. Food came together. No screaming, no slammed doors. And that's when I had that dangerous thought, no major catastrophes today, the way a sailor might admire a beautiful sky without noticing the barometer falling. 5 p.m. My partner announces she wants to take some of the food and give it to people in need. And genuinely, fine, good, even, it's a kind idea. I had no objection. Then she asked me to help her prepare it. And for once, I said no. I'd been cooking since morning. I was exhausted. This was her idea, her project, and she was fully capable of packing food into containers. I didn't say it with anger, just, no, you can handle this one. So she turned to our daughter for help. And that is when the day remembered what house it was in. Within minutes, my partner is barking orders. Get this, get that. Not asking, commanding, with an edge in her voice that turns a favor into a conscription. My daughter, who came preloaded with irritation from the moment she woke up, starts to spiral. Every instruction gets a bigger reaction. Every reaction gets exaggerated, theatrical, louder than the moment calls for. Her frustration inflates the way a small grievance does when it's really carrying years of bigger ones. My partner escalates. My daughter escalates harder. And within minutes, the kind idea, feeding people who have nothing, has become 2 people screaming at each other and throwing things across the kitchen I'd cleaned that morning. And me. I sat on the couch. Not frozen, not hiding, choosing. Years ago, I would have jumped up, played referee, absorbed blows from both sides, and accomplished exactly nothing. I've retired from that job. You cannot fix a fight that isn't actually about anything. And this fight, I promise you, was not about food containers. Then came the finale I could have written in advance. My partner storms out of the house. Furious, gone, and I sat there knowing, the way you know the sun will set, that she wasn't coming back that night. Here's the detail that unlocked everything for me. The exact same thing happened the weekend before. We'd gone out to dinner, a restaurant, a public place, and out of nowhere she manufactured a conflict and stormed out of that too. Different location, different trigger, identical ending, her walking away from us, wrapped in righteous anger. And sitting on that couch on Thanksgiving night, staring at a destroyed kitchen I'd be cleaning alone, I finally let myself ask the question out loud. Is she starting these fights on purpose, so she has an excuse to leave? Let me stop the story here, because that question deserves a real answer. There's a pattern psychologists see in emotionally immature relationships, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It's sometimes called a manufactured exit. Here's how it works. A person wants to leave the room, the house, the evening, maybe something bigger. But leaving calmly requires something they don't have, the ability to own a need directly. To say, I want to go out tonight, or I need space, plain words, no villain required. Because here's the catch with honest words, they come with accountability. If you calmly say, I'm leaving, then leaving is your choice, and you have to stand behind it. But if there's a fight first, if the house is burning, then leaving isn't a choice anymore, it's a rescue. Nobody questions why you ran out of a burning building. The conflict isn't the obstacle to leaving, the conflict is the permission slip. And the person may not even consciously know they're doing it. That's the unsettling part. The pattern can run entirely beneath awareness, a nervous system that has learned, over decades, that anger is the only vehicle that ever gets you out the door without guilt. So why does someone develop this pattern? And why does an entire family end up orbiting around it? Start with emotional immaturity. Not immaturity as an insult, immaturity as a description. Emotional maturity means being able to feel a need, name it, and express it without recruiting anyone else into a drama. I'm overwhelmed. I want a night to myself. Simple sentences. But for someone who never developed that skill, often because they grew up in a home where direct needs were ignored or punished, simple sentences feel impossible. Emotions don't get spoken in that world. They get staged. Anger becomes the workhorse emotion because anger is the only feeling that comes with its own justification built in. Sadness asks for comfort, fear asks for reassurance, but anger just points at someone else and says, they made me do it. Now layer in what family systems thinkers have understood for decades. Families are not collections of individuals, they're systems. Everyone develops a role, and the roles interlock like gears. In this house, look at the gears. One person becomes the overfunctioner, the one who cooks the turkey, the ham, the potatoes, who cleans the kitchen before dawn and again before midnight. Overfunctioning looks noble from the outside. From the inside, it's a slow-motion transaction. I will carry everything, and in exchange, the chaos continues anyway. The overfunctioner keeps the machine running, which, and this is the bitter irony, means the machine never has to change. Another person becomes the underfunctioner, too tired, too unwell, too something. And here's the thing most people miss. Underfunctioning isn't laziness. It's a strategy. Helplessness is a currency. If I can't, then someone else must. Over 20 years, I can't stops being a statement and becomes a lifestyle, funded entirely by the person who always can. And the third gear, a young adult raised inside this weather system, who learned by demonstration that the loudest reaction wins, that irritation is a valid opening move, that emotions aren't regulated, they're broadcast. When she woke up angry about how the dishes were being washed, that wasn't really about dishes. That was a nervous system trained from childhood to treat every interaction as a potential threat. Children don't do what we say, they do what the house does. Now put those gears together and add a holiday. Holidays are pressure cookers for dysfunctional systems, and there's a reason. Holidays carry expectations, togetherness, gratitude, warmth, and expectations create a gap between the family you're supposed to be and the family you are. Emotionally immature people feel that gap as unbearable tension, and there is one reliable way to relieve unbearable tension. Detonated. An explosion, strange as it sounds, is a form of relief. The dread of waiting for conflict is often worse than the conflict itself. Some researchers describe nervous systems that become genuinely calibrated to chaos, where calm feels foreign, even threatening, and crisis feels like home. For a person wired that way, a peaceful Thanksgiving afternoon isn't pleasant, it's suspenseful. Something in them starts looking for the match. Which brings us back to 5 p.m. Watch the day again, but this time, watch the pattern instead of the people. The all-caps text about money before I'm even out of bed. That's not a conversation about finances. That's a system preloading tension into the day, staking out the role of the aggrieved party before breakfast. The tantrum over how I clean the kitchen. That's a nervous system raised on conflict, scanning a quiet room for a threat, because in this house, quiet has never been trustworthy. The afternoon calm, that was the gap. The unbearable stretch between the family we were pretending to be and the family we are. And the charity project at 5 p.m., the genuinely kind idea that turned into a war, notice what it produced. Not fed neighbors, it produced an exit. A justified, righteous, door-slamming exit, identical in structure to the restaurant exit the week before. Different stage, same play, same final scene. Her leaving angry, which means leaving blameless. I used to think the fights ruined the leaving. I had it backwards. The leaving was the point. The fight was the ticket. And once I saw that, I finally understood my own seat on the couch. And I had to be honest about it, because this video isn't just about her. There's a real difference between detachment and disengagement, and I've lived on both sides of the line. Healthy detachment says, I am not responsible for regulating other adults' emotions. I will not referee. I will not absorb what isn't mine. Refusing to jump into a screaming match between two grown adults, that's not weakness. That's the sanest decision in the room. You cannot de-escalate people who are getting something out of the escalation. But numbness is different. Numbness is when you stop feeling relief and start feeling nothing. When your partner doesn't come home and your honest reaction is good. When you fantasize about being at work on a holiday because work is the only place your labor is acknowledged. That's not peace. That's a soul quietly filing its resignation letter. I sat on that couch and realized I'd achieved detachment and slid past it into something grayer. And I don't say that with shame. I say it because if you've lived years inside a chaos cycle, some numbness is inevitable, it's armor. But armor you never take off stops being protection and starts being a cage. So what do you actually do with this? Not slogans, tools. First, stop auditing the trigger, watch the pattern. After every explosion, families hold trials. Who started it, who said what, whether the reaction was fair. It's a waste of breath because the trigger was never the cause, the trigger was the excuse, and excuses are interchangeable. Instead, zoom out. Ask, what does this conflict reliably produce? If the answer is an exit, or someone else doing the work, or the subject getting changed, you've found the fight's real job. Conflicts in dysfunctional systems aren't malfunctions, they're functions. Second, learn the difference between refusing the fight and abandoning yourself. Not intervening in other people's escalation, good, keep that. But detachment done right is a boundary, and a boundary has words. It sounds like, I'm not going to be part of this conversation while there's yelling. I'll be in the other room. Calm, spoken once, then followed through. Silence alone, year after year, doesn't read as a boundary. It reads as tolerance, and systems expand to fill whatever gets tolerated. Third, notice the overfunctioning transaction and start renegotiating it. Every time you do the work of 3 people, you're not just tired, you're subsidizing the system. The renegotiation isn't a dramatic speech. It's small, concrete, and boring. I'm making the turkey and the potatoes. The rest needs an owner or it doesn't happen. Then, and this is the hard part, you let the sides not happen. Overfunctioners flinch at that because letting things fail feels like failing. It isn't. It's returning responsibility to its rightful owners and letting reality do the teaching you've been shielding everyone from. Fourth, release the question, are they doing this on purpose? I know how magnetic that question is, I asked it all night. But here's the truth, it's mostly unanswerable and it's also mostly irrelevant. Whether the pattern is a conscious strategy or an unconscious reflex, your response is the same. Stop supplying the audience, stop supplying the labor, stop supplying the justification. You can't control the machinery inside another person. You can only decide what you feed into it. Late that night, I got up and cleaned the kitchen, about half of it. The other half would still be there in the morning, and I knew exactly whose hands would finish it. And standing there with a dish towel, I thought, that half-cleaned kitchen is the most honest picture of this family I've ever seen. One person restoring order alone in the wreckage of a fight that was never about anything, while the person who lit the match drives around somewhere out in the dark, feeling wronged. Here's the perspective I'll leave you with. In homes like this, we spend years asking why do they do this? And the question keeps us trapped because it points all our attention at the one thing we will never control. The more useful question is quieter, and it's the one nobody in a chaotic house wants to ask. What is my role in the machine, and what happens if I stop playing it? Not the referee, not the servant, not the ghost on the couch. The chaos was never yours to fix, but the seat you take inside it, that's always been yours to choose. If this pattern sounds like a house you've lived in, subscribe. Every week we take one story apart and find the machinery inside it, because you can't break a pattern you can't see. Understand the chaos, break the pattern,